Okay, it's back and it's section 9.3, and today I want to talk to you about how you can use a sample and compare that with the population to collect proper data. So, I don't know if you've seen this word before, but it's called a census. You might have heard it in social studies. But when a census is conducted, data is collected from all the people or items in the population. So I think in Canada we do a census every, 10 years. Now, a population does not necessarily mean everybody in the entire world, or even all of Canada, or in all of BC. It can mean something like this: all the grade 9 students at Burnaby South, or all eligible voters in Burnaby, or even all people who hold a driver's license in BC. So the key word is this word, all, but it doesn't have to be everyone in the world. It's just everyone in a specific group. So, let's see if you can identify the population in each of these surveys. So, a fitness club wants to find out how many members use a hot tub. So, what's the population that you're trying to survey? Well, it's not everybody in the world, but it's actually all the members of the fitness club. If you look at the next one, a local restaurant owner wants to know which entree or menu is preferred by restaurant's customers. Well, you're really looking at surveying all the people who eat at the restaurant. And if the silly planner wants to know which roads in the Lower Mainland people think are in most need of repair, well, you should really survey all the drivers who use the roads in the Lower Mainland. So, when a population is just too large, it's often very costly and time-consuming to survey everybody in the population. So when this happens, we often collect data from a representative portion of the population or a sample. So if you think about it, let's call the entire big box the population, and I'm going to take one small little portion of that population, and that small portion is called the sample. So, if you're talking about grade 9 students as the population, a sample would be a small part, or 75 of the grade 9 students, instead of choosing all of them. So, in example number 2, I'd like you to tell me the population, and then suggest whether I should use a census, meaning survey everybody, or a sample. How many hours of work do grade 9 students in the school have each week? Well, I think you should be surveying all, or the population is all, the grade 9 students. So, but that's going to be hard because there's almost 400 of you guys, so don't do a census, let's do a sample. Why a sample? Because there's too many people. And it might take too much time to ask everybody in the population. What percent of teenagers in cities have an iPhone? Well, really what you're thinking of the population is all teenagers who live in Burnaby. Would you want to survey all of them in a census or a representative sample? Probably a sample, and the same reasons as before. Okay? So, let's turn the page. And you might be thinking, well, what if I want the most accurate answer? Like, I should be trying to survey everybody. True. So although census data would be exact, when you use a sample, the data collected should be a true representation of the population. So you don't want to choose a sample that doesn't really represent the entire population. That would be something called invalid. Okay? Sample size being too small, that could be invalid. Okay? But you want things to be valid. So in each of these cases now, example number 3, I'd like you to look at it, read it, and then think if the conclusions would be what I call valid. Okay? Would it be a true representation of the entire population? If yes, say yes. If no, say no, and tell me why. So part A, a newspaper conducted a survey to identify the sports its readers want to have featured in the sports section. And they do a survey, it's great, on a local golf and tennis club's website. So, valid or invalid? I'm thinking invalid. So, are they valid? No way. Where's the bias here? Well, it seems to be there's a bias towards those who play golf and tennis players. Like, why would you only run the survey on those two websites? What should they do instead? Well, maybe they should actually put the survey on different sport websites, or even just put it in a newspaper. But of course, a general newspaper, not one that just caters to people who like golf, for instance. Okay, how about part B? Student government conducted a survey to determine a theme for their next dance. They asked 20 grade 9s and 30 grade 11s, and that's it. Valid or invalid? Probably not so great, because guess what? You didn't ask any grade 8s, didn't ask any grade 10s, or didn't ask any grade 12s. How do you think that the grade 9s and 11s may represent the entire school? Okay. So what can you do instead, perhaps? Right. Well, maybe I would instead, survey students from all grades. How about part C? Find out if more daycare centers are needed for the city. The surveyor asked people leaving a rec center on weekdays from 10 to 12. Is this valid or not? You would probably say no. Who really wants daycare? Well, it's people who work during the day. So people wanting daycare are usually at work from 10 to 2. So you probably wouldn't be getting a good representation of your population that you want. Right? And then weekdays from 10 to 2. Who's at the rec center on weekdays from 10 to 2? It's not you as students. It's not your mom and dad. Yeah, it could be your grandpa and grandma. So, who's there? You might be saying, well, only older people are more likely to be at the rec center weekdays from 10 to 2. And they definitely don't need daycare because their kids are grown up. How about this last one? To determine the number of people who are expected to vote in an election, the company receives the voters list, then it puts it into a computer, and the computer randomly selects 2,000 of them and then calls each of the voters on the list. Valid or invalid? I'd say this is pretty valid. Because it is quite random. You're selecting quite a few people, and you're probably going to get a good representation of the population. Alright? There you go. We're done.